Right friends, welcome back to Learning Space. This is quick wrap up, 12th module. We are going to discuss 40 statements. You are going to learn a lot through these statements. I would like to take 1 minute per each statement. This module will be of around 40 minutes duration. Let us look at the first one. This government banned colistin in food producing animals, poultry, aqua farming. Absolutely correct. Why the government banned it? Because colistin is being used as growth promoter. Because of that, when this antibiotic is used on the human beings, it may not work because of the antibiotic resistance. Keeping that in mind, government banned this. And in this context, 2-3 more points comes to my mind. First is diclofenac. That was banned for veterinary use because of the simple reason it resulted in the decimation of vulture population. Third one is formalin. Formalin or formaldehyde that is used when fish is transported from one place to other place. That was recently in the news. Oxytocin. Oxytocin is being used to increase the milk production in the animals. So friends, oxytocin, this colistin, formaldehyde, these are into the news. Diclofenac, of course, it was quite old news. And now government proposed the ban of several pesticides. And when one looks at pesticides, only center can ban. States have the power to ban only up to 60 days. These are important aspects. All the existing coal-based power plants have already been provided with flue gas desulfurization technology. Absolutely wrong. Friends, this flue gas desulfurization technology, this reduces sulfur dioxide emissions. When I talk about sulfur dioxide emissions, acid rain comes to my mind. Around the coal-based power plants, acid rain is the normal phenomena at several places. To reduce sulfur dioxide emissions, the power plants are to be provided with this flue gas desulfurization technology. They use lime or limestone as a sorbent, but unfortunately in all the coal-based power plants this is not established. Right friends, this is about sulfur dioxide pollution, and as per the recent news report, India is having the largest pollution with sulfur dioxide, and most of the coal-based power plant vicinity areas, they are saddled with this type of pollution. Then both the CITES and CMS are legally binding on the member countries. This is wrong. CITES convention, that is legally binding, but CMS, that is not legally binding. CMS is a framework convention. Under this framework convention, countries will have their own setups. That means some may be legally binding, some may be non-legally binding. So CMS is basically the framework convention. Under it, the countries may have legally binding or non-legally binding arrangements. And this is for migratory species. This is the only convention to look at migratory species. I am talking about CMS. And one more important aspect I would like to tell you is about Amur falcon. Amur falcon, which comes from Siberia, it halts in northeastern part of the country before going towards southern part of Africa. So Amur falcon, that is one example of migratory species, right? So CMS convention in detail we are going to discuss in the upcoming lectures. CITES we already deliberated, and CITES is legally binding. CMS is the framework convention. Under this framework convention, countries may have this legally binding as well as non-legally binding arrangements. Then states have the powers to designate an animal as a vermin. This is absolutely wrong. The designation of vermin can only be done by the center. States will recommend. Center will designate particular animal as vermin, and for that particular period, that will remain in the Schedule 5, and during that period, it can be hunted. This is the procedure as far as vermin is concerned. Schedule 6 that pertains to plants. Most of you are well aware. Then there's Cryodragon boreas, and such type of things are fancy for UPSC. Cryodragon boreas, which was recently identified by the paleontologists, and this could be one of the largest flying animals. It was considered as one of the largest flying animals, and remember the name. More than that, you need not look at anything. There is a complete ban on mining, quarrying, sand mining. Up to that it is correct, but not on hydropower projects, because hydropower projects there is no complete ban on the establishment in the ecologically sensitive areas. And when I am talking about ecologically sensitive areas, I am talking about Western Ghats. In the Western Ghats, after the Kasturirangan report, all of you are familiar, Madhav Gadkil report that was quite stringent. Subsequently, Kasturirangan committee gave the report and it bifurcated into cultural landscape, natural landscape. Please listen carefully. Cultural landscape and natural landscape. And subsequently, the Environment Ministry that identified certain areas as ecologically sensitive area. And as per this ecologically sensitive area notification, one important aspect is there will be complete ban on mining, quarrying, sand mining. But hydropower projects will be allowed on limited scale or after ascertaining each and every project. Right? So this statement becomes wrong because there is no blanket ban on hydropower projects. Ecologically sensitive area, Western Ghats. Then, during the previous decade, in general, the consumer price index based inflation is on declining trend. It is absolutely correct. It talks about decade, 10 years. Of course, in recent times, it started increasing again. During the past 1 year or so, it is on the increasing trend. But this statement talks about during the previous decade. During the previous decade, in fact, consumer price index based inflation, it came down from around 10-12% right up to 4%, and now it is started increasing during the past 1 year. So in general, this statement is considered as correct. Then SBI, ICICI Bank are the only domestic systemically important banks in India. Wrong. HDFC Bank you have to include. And two more points I would like to tell you. Across the globe, there are globally systemically important banks which are known as GSIBs, but no Indian bank is into GSIBs. Second point is these three banks, SBI, ICICI, HDFC, these three have to maintain additional capital adequacy, and that capital adequacy additional that varies from bank to bank. It is not uniform. I am talking about additional capital adequacy. When I talk about capital adequacy, all of you must remember capital adequacy ratio including capital conservation buffer is 11.5%. 9% capital adequacy ratio, 2.5% capital conservation buffer. That means that capital is to be maintained in good times so that can be used in the bad times. So friends, for Indian banks, 9% capital adequacy ratio and 2.5% is capital conservancy buffer, right? And this 9% that is divided into tier 1, tier 2, that is different story. That much details may not be important to you. So friends, NBFCs whose asset size is rupees 500 crore or more, they are considered as systemically important NBFCs. So please correct it, rupees 500 crore. Then during the previous decade, there was increase in the share of regular wage or salaried employees. Friends, do not get confused. I would like to tell you two important aspects. One is overall labor force participation rate. I will come to it a short while from now. Overall labor force participation rate, that declined. That is one aspect. Second aspect is out of the total workforce, regular wage or salaried employees, this increased, casual employees decreased. This is the important aspect to note. We are comparing statistics between 2011-12 and 2017-18. And when you compare 2011-12 and 2017-18, two important aspects. One is labor force participation rate that declined substantially across the country. For women, it was two worst, and for the entire population, it reduced substantially. That is one aspect, that is about labor force participation rate. Second important aspect which I am talking about is the share of regular wage or salaried employees. So, regular wage salaried employees increased, casual employees reduced. This is as per the available statistics. So friends, there was increase in the share of regular wage or salaried employees from 18% to 23%, absolutely correct. And for women, increase is from 13 to 21%, absolutely correct. Then withholding tax. Quite often you talk about certain taxes. This is one withholding tax. What is this withholding tax? This is the tax on interest or dividends paid to a person who is resident outside the country. Suppose if the person is a resident outside the country, he is non-resident here, he is the resident outside the country, and under those circumstances, there's a withholding tax. Certain percentage of tax is imposed on the interest or dividends paid to that person. That is withholding tax. Then, in recent years, the central banks in developed countries, they are maintaining ultra low interest rates. One point I would like to tell you, after the economic crisis of 2007-8, subsequently, the central banks in advanced countries, if you look at the Fed of USA, if you look at the European Central Bank, if you look at Bank of England, if you look at Bank of Japan, and these central banks, they are maintaining ultra low interest rates. The idea was to propel growth with low interest. When the low interest is there, then people will borrow money from the banks and it propels growth, or it gives a thrust to the growth momentum. That was the idea of maintaining ultra low interest rates. And one positive thing with regard to ultra low interest rates for countries like India is a lot of capital flows are taking place, because there the interest rate structure is less. Because of that, they get less returns there. And the returns which they get in the stock markets as well as on the debt that is high in emerging economies like India. So therefore, capital flows are taking place from developed countries to emerging economies like India. So this statement is absolutely correct. Right. Let us look at the next statement. In India, more than 2/3 of the investments through foreign direct investment are flowing into the brownfield sector. Friends, not only in India, across the world, the trait of this foreign direct investment is more investments are coming into the brownfield sector. Brownfield sector means purchasing the existing company. When the foreign direct investment is coming to the greenfield sector, it is expected to create more jobs. But across the globe, as well as in our country also, majority of the foreign direct investment is coming into the brownfield sector. Let me tell you one example. If the foreign direct investment from United States of America is utilized in purchasing a pharmaceutical company in our country, existing pharmaceutical company is purchased by an American entity, that is brownfield investment. Across the globe, if you look at foreign direct investment, brownfield is more than greenfield investment. And in our country, brownfield is still higher in comparison to the global average. Friends, more than 2/3 of the investments through FDI are coming into the brownfield sector. So because of this, one thing is employment creation that will not be on the expected lines. Proper employment creation is not taking place in our country because of the simple reason more investment is coming into the brownfield sector. And out of the foreign direct investment, services, they are attracting higher FDI, and majority of the FDI, or you can say the highest FDI, is coming from Singapore nowadays, right? Then for foreign direct investment through automatic route, foreign direct investment comes through two ways. One is approval route. Approval route means the competent authority approval is required, and in the sensitive sectors, approval route may be there, because it may involve strategic aspects, sensitive aspects. Under those circumstances, foreign direct investment is allowed through approval route. But in several cases, majority of the cases, foreign direct investment comes through automatic route. When the foreign direct investment is coming to the country through automatic route, approval of RBI is not required. Nobody's approval is required when the FDI is coming into the country through automatic route. Only information is required. RBI is to be informed. Please correct this statement. Then the remittances through liberalized remittance scheme have increased massively in recent times. Liberalized remittance scheme for any capital investment, for any current account. If somebody is going for medical, if somebody is going for education, if somebody wants to purchase something in United States of America, a house, if somebody wants to purchase shares in USA, for all such things, whether it is current, whether it is capital account, it doesn't matter. And every Indian person, he is allowed to send up to $250,000 per annum, and to the foreign countries I am talking about. That is liberalized remittance scheme, popularly known as LRS. But the worrying factor is, in recent times, the remittances through LRS increased enormously in recent times. Then, during the period 2011-12 to 17-18, I talked about it a short while ago. During 2011-12 to 2017-18, labor force participation rate, that is LFPR, for the entire country, both men and women put together, that reduced from 63% to 50%. And for women, it is reduced from 48% to 23%. These statistics are most important. First one I talked about the share of the regular or wage employment. This I am talking about overall fall in the labor force participation rate. Please don't get confused. Then, banking laws were made applicable to the cooperative societies subsequent to economic reforms. Absolutely wrong. In fact, by amendments to the Banking Regulation Act, why I am discussing about this is the cooperative banks are into the news. Government brought an ordinance, and government is now bringing a bill in Parliament with regard to strengthening urban cooperative banks and multi-state cooperative banks. Strengthening urban cooperative banks and multi-state cooperative banks. In this context, I would like to tell you brief history, because these urban cooperative banks, these are into the news in recent times. I would like to tell you the Reserve Bank of India is nudging. That means it is asking urban cooperative banks to convert to small finance banks. That is one part of the story. Second is the urban cooperative banks rules were almost brought at a par with small finance banks. Like 50% of the loans should be up to 25 lakh value, and gradually the priority sector lending for the urban cooperative banks, they have to be increased to 75% at par with small finance banks. These 2-3 changes were brought recently as far as urban cooperative banks are concerned, because urban cooperative banks are failing a lot in recent years. Because of that reason, RBI brought stringent regulations as far as urban cooperative banks are concerned. Second is, it is nudging urban cooperative banks to convert to small finance banks. This is the second point. Third important aspect is, now government is bringing the bill to strengthen urban cooperative banks and multi-state cooperative banks. And a question arises, till now, how the RBI is regulating urban cooperative banks. Friends, in the year 1966, please listen carefully. In the year 1966, by amending Banking Regulation Act 1949, these cooperative societies, whichever are establishing banks, they were brought under the purview of Reserve Bank of India. That means banking licenses, giving the license, cancelling the license, they are under the purview of Reserve Bank of India, but management control is under the state governments as far as urban cooperative banks are concerned. Because of that, several urban cooperative banks are failing. Now the amendments, or you can say, now a bill was introduced in Parliament to strengthen the management. That means RBI can override the board, RBI can say something about appointment of the CEO, like that management strengthening steps are being taken now with the bills in parliament, or you can say bill in parliament. I hope you got clarity. So friends, as far as urban cooperative banks are concerned, then multi-state cooperative banks are concerned, now the government is worried because several failures are taking place. But from the year 1966, banking laws were made applicable to the cooperative societies who established banks. But managerial control is with the state governments. Now RBI wants to control more in view of several failures of cooperative banks. From your preliminary perspective, banking laws were made applicable to cooperative societies from 1960s onwards by amendments to the Banking Regulation Act 1949. That is the first point. Second point, as on date, SLR, CRR, these norms are applicable not only for commercial banks but also for cooperative banks. This is also true. But one more important aspect is management control is with the state governments because they are registered under the Cooperative Societies Act. Now the Reserve Bank of India wants to have more control in the management of the banks. Otherwise, CRR, SLR, these are all there for several years, just like commercial banks. At the same time, giving license, cancelling license, that's all with Reserve Bank of India for several years. But now, through the bill introduced in Parliament, what the government wants to do is strengthening the management, like the say in the appointment of CEOs, overriding the board, like that, tightening further regulations. I hope you got clarity. Then, prudential norms like CRR, SLR are applicable for both commercial banks and cooperative banks. Perfectly correct. Then prompt corrective action framework is applicable for, this is wrong, prompt corrective action framework, where 3 thresholds are there. Threshold 1, threshold 2, threshold 3. Once these thresholds are crossed, as far as capital adequacy, as far as NPAs, net NPAs, as far as return on assets are concerned, that means it looks at capital availability, it looks at bad loans, it looks at profitability. If they cross certain threshold, certain restrictions will come into force. That is corrective action framework. That is applicable for commercial banks, both public sector and private sector. But for cooperative banks, there is another framework, some supervisory framework. Just look for the name. So friends, for cooperative banks, there is another framework, and this prompt corrective action framework that is applicable for only commercial banks, whether they are public or private sector. For the cooperative banks, management related functions are looked after by respective state governments. Absolutely correct. Now, through the bills, now government wants to have, or you can say RBI will have more control as far as the boards are concerned. Existing NBFCs, MFIs, local area banks, payment banks can be converted to small finance banks. Absolutely correct. Now, the Reserve Bank of India has given regulations, or you can say it released the rules and regulations. Existing NBFCs, microfinance institutions, local area banks, payment banks, they can be converted into small finance banks. Another important aspect I would like to tell you, the capital requirement. Previously, for the small finance banks, capital requirement was 100 crores of rupees. Now it is increased to rupees 200 crores. And for the payment banks whichever completed 5 years, they are eligible for conversion to small finance banks. Then, in India, both equity and debt-based crowdfunding is legally permitted. Absolutely wrong. In our country, equity-based crowdfunding is not allowed. SEBI not allowed equity-based crowdfunding. But this debt-based crowdfunding, that is allowed, and there is specifically one entity, that is NBFC P2P. NBFC P2P, and these are regulated by Reserve Bank of India. So in our country, The equity-based crowdfunding is not allowed. Debt-based crowdfunding is allowed. And debt-based crowdfunding is regulated through, or you can say, the entities are called NBFC P2Ps, peer-to-peer based lending, and these are regulated by Reserve Bank of India. Then the Abdul Latif Jameel Poverty Action Lab, which is known for randomized controlled trials. Friends, this randomized controlled trials, these are associated with the Nobel Prize in Economics. All of you are familiar. Abhijit Banerjee, Duflo, and one more, Kremer. They got the Nobel Prize or Nobel Memorial Prize in Economics, Sveriges Riksbank Prize in Economics, you can call it. And this is through this Abdul Latif Jameel Poverty Action Lab, through the randomized controlled trials. And this particular lab that is associated with MIT, it is not associated with World Bank. World Bank is nothing to do with it. Then the failure of IL&FS. IL&FS is NBFC, and its failure is primarily because of asset liability mismatch. Whatever borrowings, suppose these NBFCs, when they borrow money, that is liability. That means they borrow money from the public and then they invest in the infrastructure projects. When they make investments in the infrastructure projects, they are assets for them. They borrow money from public, that is in fact liability for them. There is asset liability mismatch. They are borrowing for 1 year, 2 years duration, and they are lending to the infrastructure projects for 30 years duration, 20 years duration. That is asset liability mismatch. Right. Look at the next statement. Public sector banks are the banking companies registered under the Companies Act 1956. This is absolutely wrong. There is a huge difference in the private sector banks and public sector banks. Quite often Reserve Bank of India says that they have enough powers to control private sector banks but not public sector banks, because there is a difference in the establishment. If you look at private sector banks, they are banking companies registered under the Companies Act 1956. But if you look at the public sector banks, they are established, or you can say most of the public sector banks are established as corporations under the parliamentary acts. If you look at the Nationalization Act of 1970, Nationalization Act of 1980, like that, they are through statutes by the parliament. That is the difference between public sector banks and private sector banks. This is the precise reason why the Reserve Bank of India powers to control private sector banks are more than the powers to control public sector banks, because public sector banks, most of them emanated from the parliamentary acts. That is the difference. Banks must maintain capital at a minimum ratio of 11.5%, including capital conservation buffer. I have already explained you that 9% capital adequacy ratio plus 2.5% capital conservation buffer, and this is to be accumulated during the good times, that is capital conservation buffer. So overall it becomes 11.5%, 9% capital adequacy ratio and 2.5% capital conservation buffer. And additional tier 1 bonds, they are quite often in the news. Additional tier 1 bonds, they are being mobilized, or you can say by issuing additional tier 1 bonds, money is being mobilized, and that money is part of the capital adequacy ratio required to be maintained by the banks. Capital adequacy ratio has got tier 1, tier 2. I am not going into the details. And this additional tier 1 bonds, they are unsecured. That means to satisfy capital adequacy ratio, banks mobilize money. And if you look at additional tier 1 bonds or AT1 bonds, these are unsecured perpetual bonds. That means throughout the life they are paying interest. There is no maturity date. Of course, they can call back if they want. Otherwise, they are continuous, or you can say perpetual bonds. They have to pay high interest in comparison to the normal bonds. and several banks mobilize money with the issue of additional Tier 1 bonds. And additional Tier 1 bonds, they are part of the capital adequacy which the banks are required to maintain. Virtual currencies like Bitcoin, they have not banned in India. This is the important aspect. Bitcoin is not banned in India. Reserve Bank of India imposed certain regulations not to participate in the activities pertaining to Bitcoin and other virtual currencies. But later on, Supreme Court struck that circular. So from your examination perspective, Bitcoin or other virtual currencies, they are not banned in India. This statement is wrong. They are not at all banned in India, but there are some restrictions pertaining to the banking entities as far as the activities pertaining to virtual currencies. There was one blanket circular issued by Reserve Bank of India, and subsequently Supreme Court quashed it down. Then Bitcoin is an example of fiduciary money. Absolutely correct. This is based on trust. And if you look at 100 rupee note in your pocket, that is example of legal tender or fiat money. Legal tender, fiat money, your 100 rupee note. But Bitcoin is an example of fiduciary money that is based on trust only. Then money accumulated in currency and gold revaluation account of RBI. Friends, Bimal Jalan Committee was constituted to decide finally with regard to the economic capital framework of Reserve Bank of India. It came to the conclusion, whatever money accumulated under this currency and gold revaluation account or CAGR, this accumulation, that is because of the increase in the value of gold, increase in the value of foreign currency, whatever accumulates, whatever deteriorates, the Reserve Bank of India should not transfer to the center. That means CAGR, whether it increases or whether it decreases, that must be kept with the Reserve Bank of India. But the contingency fund, CF, that is to be maintained at 5.5% to 6.5% of the assets. And now the Reserve Bank of India is maintaining 5.5% as the base, and beyond that it is transferring to the central government. And one more point is the accounting year, that will be streamlined with the financial year of the government, and whatever money is transferred by Reserve Bank of India to the government, that is non-tax revenue. These points are important. So friends, this is absolutely correct statement. As per Bimal Jalan Committee report, RBI's economic capital framework, that is to be reviewed after every 5 years. Please correct this statement. Economic capital framework, I have already talked about. Contingency fund, how much is to be maintained. Then this currency and gold revaluation account, how much is to be maintained. All these things, they are defined, or you can say recommended by Bimal Jalan Committee, which is accepted, and subsequently now 5.5% to 6.5% is the contingency fund, and this CAGR, whatever is accumulated, that must be kept with RBI. Nothing should be transferred to the center. This is as per Bimal Jalan Committee, and this economic capital framework, that is to be reviewed once in 5 years as stated by Bimal Jalan Committee. And it also recommended aligning accounting year of RBI with that of the financial year of the government, and the government is already doing this. Then currency notes issued by RBI and deposits by the central and state governments with RBI, this comes under liabilities. If you look at Reserve Bank of India, what are the liabilities? The liabilities are currency notes issued by Reserve Bank of India. These are liabilities. On the currency note, you see Reserve Bank of India governor, he promises for us to pay, or you can say he is promising us for the value of that particular note. That is liability on the part of the Reserve Bank of India, and these notes are guaranteed by the central government. That is different story. And if you look at the liabilities of Reserve Bank of India, one is the currency notes issued, deposits by the central and state governments with the Reserve Bank of India, deposits by the banks with Reserve Bank of India. These are all liabilities, not assets. Please correct this statement. What are the assets? Foreign currency assets and loans given by Reserve Bank of India. These are all assets. And let me tell you the difference between assets and liabilities in the banking system. In the State Bank of India, if you see, if I deposit 1000 rupees, it is liability for State Bank of India. So friends, our deposits with the banks, these are liabilities. And when State Bank of India is giving a loan to some company, that is asset for State Bank of India. Because of that reason, we call non-performing assets. Standard assets, non-performing assets, right? Then Companies Act clearly defines shell companies. Absolutely wrong. Shell companies, they are quite often in the news, and shell companies can be established for legitimate purposes also. More than 90% of the companies in our country are established for illegitimate purposes. So friends, Companies Act, there is no definition of shell companies. That is unfortunate. Then predatory pricing is the pricing with the intent of harming the rivals. Friends, in recent times, telecom companies are into the news, especially Reliance Jio was in the news with regard to the allegations of predatory pricing. That means reducing the pricing too much. Once the competition is eliminated, then increasing the price. This is predatory pricing. Then, issuer pays principle is the real problem in the functioning of credit rating agencies. Absolutely correct. Credit rating agencies, there are several failures because of the simple reason they are having faulty business model. Issuer pays principle. If they are giving a ranking for the bonds issued by some company X, the money is paid for the services rendered by these credit rating agencies by the company itself. This is issuer pays principle. Because of that, credit rating agencies' reliability has gone down. REITs, InvITs, alternative investment funds, collective investment schemes with corpus of rupees 100 crore or more, they comes under the regulatory purview of SEBI. Absolutely correct. REITs, real estate investment trusts, infrastructure investment trusts. Here, the investors like you and me will pool up money. After that, they invest in the real estate, commercial real estate. They invest in the infrastructure highway project. After that, they give me some sort of units and returns. So friends, these are REITs, InvITs. Then this alternative investment funds. That means private equity, venture capital funds. The investments into the startups, that is venture capital funds, they comes under alternative investment funds. And then collective investment schemes. That means the investment is collected together. After that, that investment is invested in some assets, like raising the teak plantation, for example, like raising the sandalwood plantation, for example. And when the collective investment schemes with corpus of rupees 100 crore or more, all these are regulated by Securities and Exchange Board of India. Next statement is Vivad Se Vishwas scheme. This is for direct taxpayers, and Sabka Vishwas scheme, that is for indirect taxpayers. This is with regard to the tax disputes. Tax disputes are lingering for years. To solve them amicably, some concession, interest waiver, penalty waiver, such type of things are given by the government. And Vivad Se Vishwas, that is for direct taxpayers, and Sabka Vishwas, that is for indirect taxpayers. Then the share of private sector banks in total bank credit increased substantially. Please correct this statement. Because public sector banks during the past 7-8 years, they are bogged down by high non-performing assets. Meanwhile, the private sector banks, they increased their market share in the total credit. So, the share of the private sector banks in the overall credit, that increased substantially in recent times. This is the correct statement. The percentage of renewable energy in total electricity generated, it is not stagnant. During the past 5-6 years, it increased from around 4 to 5% to around 9 to 10%. So please correct the statement. Then Singapore topped the Financial Secrecy Index released by Tax Justice Network. Tax Justice Network is the UK based financial advocacy group. It releases financial secrecy index. For several years, Singapore dominated, but recently, Cayman Islands dominated, or you can say Cayman Islands came at the top. And previously, Singapore was at the top, but this statement is correct because of the transparency which is coming into the Singapore activities of financial activities. Then what happened is Cayman Islands topped instead of Singapore. So from your prelims perspective, this financial secrecy index, this is released by Tax Justice Network. Friends, this is the 12th module. Have a nice day. Thank you.